I'd like to talk about one of the lesser known apps in our App Center, and that's Browser Station. I do have it already installed on my unit here, but if you wanted to install it, when you open up the App Center, on the left hand side you've got the options for different categories. If you go into the Utilities category, you can see Browser Station there as one of the first options there in the alphabetical list. It does require that you have Container Station installed, and the prerequisites for the NAS, it must have at least 4 gig of RAM, and it must be an Intel or AMD based unit to be able to run Browser Station. So some basic use cases of Browser Station, if I just open it up right here, is to access things in the LAN that the QNAP is based in, even if you're not next to the QNAP. So here we have the Browser Station that's opened up. Normally you get a little wizard that pops up explaining some of the benefits. I've skipped that, so I'll show you what those are. What this allows you to do is open up virtual instances of Google Chrome, basically directly hosted on the NAS. So I've got none open right now on this TVS H1288X, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the plus button, and in the little window here it's going to open up a instance of Google Chrome, a virtual instance of Google Chrome, that I can then use and interact with and open up websites from the QNAP itself. So this is really handy, especially if you're not in a country, let's say, that lets you access a certain website, but your QNAP is. This will allow you to connect to your QNAP remotely. You don't have to use a VPN or anything like that. You just have to open up a single port for the admin on your QNAP. Once you're logged in, you can then access anything, and it's going to think that you're in the country that the QNAP's in. So great for things, say, like Netflix, for example, if you wanted to see content directly that way. And it's also good if there's a web browser window where you have to have it open. So let's say you're trying to buy tickets for a show, concert, something like that, and you didn't want to close the browser window. This way you can have it open running on the QNAP, maintaining your place in that queue. So over here on the left hand side we've got the overview screen that now shows I've got one browser tab open. You've got different options here for logs, when a browser was open, what was being done in it, and you've also got the preferences, so you can choose the display resolution of the window itself, so you can start at 1080p and go all the way up to 4K if you want to as well. So I'm going to click here straight onto my existing browser window that I already have open here. Now, one of the side benefits here is if you did want to use this to manage lots of QNAPs at your site, we do also have a shortcut pre-added for QFinder. So if you click that, it's going to open up an instance of QFinder directly here in the web browser, and it's going to go off and find all the QNAP devices within the network that same QNAP's hosted on. So it's found itself, the TVS H1288X, and it's also found some of the other NAS that I've got running here as well. So if you don't need to access different QNAPs, you can access different websites. So we've put a few favorites down here, so if you wanted to go and access a certain website, you can. And again, you can completely interact with it just like you would any other browser that's on your machine. It's just now you're accessing it directly in the QNAP. And if I was to close out of the browser station here and then go back into it, I can click back onto that admin browser and that window will still be open. So if you did ever need to click off a browser, it's still going to stay open and persistent in the background. So it's really useful for anything like that. But it does also work for other things as well. So if you wanted to access things, let's say like YouTube, you can see all the YouTube content here as well. So you can access and play videos through this if you wanted to. So it's a very cool feature. Sort of a use case that I had recently is I'd installed a new router, and all I'd allowed through the router when I went on a trip to Ireland was the access to my NAS remotely. I didn't have remote access to my router settings or anything like that, but I wanted to enable VPN access. So what this allowed me to do is it allowed me to log into my NAS, and then effectively I could just go to the IP address of my router and access it completely remotely. So if I wanted to access my router sign-in, which is here, I can do that even if I don't have ports open to the router settings. So it's very, very, very handy for being able to go through and see some different functions. If you ever want to go back to the home screen, you just click the X at the top, and it will go back to the main launch screen there. And we've even got Q-Search helper. So if you're using Q-Search on the NAS, you can do that as well. Now, if you're ever on a website that you need to download a file for or anything like that, so if we go to the support section and we go to, let's say, download one of the OS or firmware updates for one of our NAS devices. So here, if I pick NAS and expansion, I'll choose 12 bay. I'll download it for the NAS we're currently using here. So if I go down here, TVS H1288X, I can see I've got all the different firmwares for this NAS. So if I wanted to download the firmware for this particular unit, it's going to download it, and it's downloading this directly to the browser station folder, the shared folder, on this NAS itself. So if I wanted to download a file to be able to be used on the network, I can do that. So once this file's downloaded, I could go to File Station, extract the zip file, use the file, do whatever I needed to from it. So that's really handy that you can do remote downloads directly to your NAS through this system as well. Maybe while you're at work, you wanted to download a movie or something so that it was ready when you got home. So you could log into your NAS browser station, download the file, and by the time you get home, that movie is going to be downloaded and on your NAS, ready for you to do whatever you need to do with it. So it's really, really easy to use, really easy to set up. It is literally just a web browser, and you can have lots of tabs within each one. So if you wanted to have one, say, for Facebook, you can have that, one for Google. You can have multiple tabs inside each one, and at any point, you can go back to the overview screen and create a new browser if you wanted to as well. So if you wanted a separate browser, so one's for work stuff, one's for personal stuff, you can set that up as well. So you can have different browsers running side by side. They're nothing to do with each other. They're completely independent from each other. So everything that I've got going in my main admin browser 1 here is still there. All the tabs are still open along the top, but admin browser 2 is completely separate. So you can change things like that as well. So it's really easy to use, very useful function if you, especially somebody that travels and need to access things that are geo-locked to certain places. This is going to be able to allow you to view websites in that remote location, but as if you are in the location where the NAS is installed. So hopefully you found that helpful, useful. It's a completely free application. Again, the only two real restrictions are that you must have at least 4 gig of RAM running on your NAS to install Browser Station, and it must have an Intel or AMD CPU to be able to install it. And again, it is completely free, and to install it on your NAS, you do have to have Container Station installed first of all. In this instance here, you can see that about each instance of a web browser that I'm running is using about half a gig of memory. So it's not too resource hungry on your NAS. And if you ever want rid of them, you can just click the X button there, and it will give you that RAM back. So it's going to put a little bin icon until it deletes that browser. It's gone away, so now the RAM usage for that has gone away as well. Again, so yeah, hopefully you found that useful. Hopefully somebody has a use case for that, but it's a very handy feature that gives you access to anything within the LAN that has a web interface. So I find it really handy for managing my router remotely. I don't want to open up the ports for that personally to the outside world. I'd rather log in to the QNAP securely and then have access to anything on my network with a web interface, you know, settings for my printer, my router, my access points, you know, anything that I want to go through, I can just access the one thing here on the QNAP and then access the other items that way. If anyone has any questions, please do let us know in the comment section below, and we'll get back to you as quick as we can. Thanks a lot. Bye.